How's it going, everybody? My name's Joe Amesquita. I'll be the narrator for y'all's project today. I want to give a shout out to my group. I feel like they really crushed it. Group projects can be difficult at times, but all the individuals that I got paired with, knocked out their tasks and were good communicators throughout the whole thing, and I appreciate them very so much. Secondly, I would like to shout out our professor. Going into this course, I know I'm not the only one. It seemed that it was a lot of moving parts, and at first it was overwhelming. But as we got the ball rolling, this course is um, I've learned a lot of tools that I'm gonna take on with me after this into my career, into my personal life. A lot of these articles that we got to read and share and reflect, and it really does. It is beyond the classroom. And the professor, she has shown so much support through her announcements, through her reflections, and her reaching out to and responding to people's reflections. It's awesome, and I really do enjoy this course. But all that being said, I would like to get into our chapter 11. It was covering informing and persuading. Purpose and overview. Explain the role of professional excellence in public speaking. Recognize different opportunities to present and speak in public. Identify the core purpose behind a presentation. Plan and organize an effective, informative speech. Structure a persuasive speech with clear goals and support. And lastly, use the keys process to strengthen skills as both an informer and persuader. So these are the topics that we're going to cover through our presentation. This is this general overview. By the end of this presentation, we should be able and feel confident in all these aspects of the, informing and persuading. So let's get into it. What is professional excellence in speaking? Professional excellence in public speaking means using effective communication skills to present yourself in a confident, clear, and respectful way that reflects maturity, preparation, and leadership. Why is it important? Your communication reflects who you are. Product presentations, team huddles, meetings, and events all show your levels of professionalism. Presentations and leadership tools, they help motivate employees, communicate business goals, and support teamwork. You can be professionally excellent without speaking well. You can't, sorry. You can't be professionally excellent without speaking well. Strong speaking skills are a key part of being respected and successful in your career. Um, just like we learned pretty early on in our education and our community classes, is speaking clear, not mumbling, speaking at a volume that everybody can hear you, uh, is very important to get the message or presentation off that you're giving. If you start to mumble or speak even softly, you lose your audience's respect in a way that because you are going in unprepared, you're not confident, and you will just like I said, you will lose your audience's interest. If you're doing a presentation for a product or such. So being prepared, being confident, speaking clearly, and not being disrespectful as improper words, and staying professional. As far as speaking at a good tone or volume that everybody can hear, whether you're speaking to 1 to 5 individuals and or you're speaking to 100 to 200 people using a mic. If you're going to use a mic, be professional, be prepared, show up early, maybe run through your speech, make sure the mic's working perfect so that everybody in the crowd can hear you. These little things and can really set the tone for your presentation, and that's exactly what professional excellence is being prepared, being confident, being clear, being respectful, and this is one of the key factors to the presentation as far as your audience hearing. So now let's get into the types of presentation opportunities. Leaders have two main types of presentation opportunities. One being formal presentations, happens in traditional settings like sales pitches, progress reports, and business presentations. This is usually planned in advance. A speaking and structure are expected by the audience. The second one being opportunity presentations, happens in a less traditional or informal settings like team huddles, short speeches during meetings, and casual updates. This is often spontaneous or brief, however, it is still requires presentation and professionalism. So a couple of formal examples would be a presentation to a new customer. You're selling a product, or another one would be if you're starting a business, you're selling a pitch to investors. Business reports, giving your board or your directors reports on how your department is going. These are all types of formal presentations. They're set up in advance. You know your audience is expecting this presentation. On the other hand, you have opportunity presentations. A couple examples, like mentioned, is team huddles. These happen before or after shifts, or these can even be like, let's say, some safety issue comes up mid shift. Hey, we need to have a team huddle. Let's make everybody put everybody on the same page. These are still presentations. These are still important. You still have to speak clearly. You still have to get your information across. You cannot be mumbling. You do not want to be disrespectful. You want to talk in a tone where all your employees are able to retain the information you're presenting. Just like that, there are even safety meetings. Perfect examples. I used to work in the oil field. We all had to do JSA meetings, job safety analysis. These are super important. They're small presentations. You would have to go over what you're going to be doing on job site, some safety points, and just so everybody's on the same page. If anything were to happen, you're relaying, if just an emergency, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going to meet at. And those are the type of presentations, even though they are spontaneous and not as formal, they are still just as important as to getting your message across. You do not want to be mumbling, like I said. And if emergency does happen and that person or employees that you were talking to did not get the message clearly, it could, not end well. So both of them are equally important. Formal presentations, opportunity presentations, they do have their they are different, but they are still both very important. Next up, determining the purpose of a presentation. Presentations have two general purposes: to inform or to persuade. To inform, you are presenting facts, data, or knowledge. You are also acting as a teacher, relaying the information. Teacher is a very good example. They are trying to teach and relay information, whether it be any class that is a presentation, to inform. Another good example would be um, a middle manager informing the reports to their boss, to their terminal manager, or the board of how their store or their company is doing. You are just relaying information from what you know to you're presenting what you know to this audience, whoever it may be. Next would be to persuade, convincing the audience to agree or take action. You are acting as an advocate or making an argument. There are two types of this. Is a passive argument and an active argument, which means getting people to agree with you with an idea. That is a passive argument. A great example of a passive argument would be student loan forgiveness. You're speaking to an audience that may not be able to take exact action to get that student loan forgiven, but you are presenting to persuade them that, hey, this is a great idea. We should get all student loans forgiven. On the other hand, active agreement. You are a car salesman trying to per, persuade the customer to buy this car, or you are trying to get this investor to invest in your company. There's active, passive, and informal. So these are the three purposes of a presentation. Now, what is a specific purpose? Once you have identified the general purpose of your presentation, you'll begin to formulate a specific purpose. The definition being, your specific purpose is a clear goal for your presentation. It is the one thing that you want your audience to understand or do when you are finished speaking. So in general, you are going to have a lot of points made, but if there is only one thing that you want your audience to take away or do at the end of the presentation, it will be the specific purpose. A couple of good examples that are here. I want my students to understand how managing time effectively can reduce stress during finals week. It might have a bunch of points on what to do going into finals week, how to prepare in certain ways, but get get a good amount of rest, study, but the specific purpose being, hey, time managing your time effectively can reduce the stress during finals week. The next example, I want my team to feel excited and motivated about launching our new project in a few days. This manager might have ran off the report, how they're doing great, went into detail about this new project coming up. His specific purpose for this is, hey, I want y'all to get excited for this project launch. Keep doing what y'all are doing, but this is what's to come. Specific purpose. Now, let's move on to the next one. Speaking to inform. What does it mean to inform? Since we know that informative speakers act like teachers, our job is to present facts clearly and objectively without inserting your personal opinions or emotions. What should you keep in mind when performing these speeches? The goal is at hand is understanding the information and not persuading. We aim to be neutral and credible. When giving these informal speeches, you do not want to start with, well, in my opinion, I believe, or any opinion like that. It strays away from speaking an informal speech, or not informal, informative speech. You do not want to start persuading or even bringing your emotions into this type of speech. So coming off that last slide, you want to be credible. How building credibility. Ethos equals credibility. Your audience needs to trust you and the information you are presenting. How to build ethos. Mention your background or experience. We all have read our syllabus for our professor. She has the background and experience to build that credibility. Um, Cite trustworthy sources. You, at the end of a paper, you want to have citable, trustworthy sources. You do not want to go and cite Wikipedia or any site that anybody can edit. You want trustworthy sources. Use up-to-date data, accurate data. If you are presenting reports, you do not want to, unless it pertains to it, but you not want to use outdated. 2025 this year. You do not want to have data from 2020. That doesn't build your credibility. And also be organized and be confident in your delivery. Like we talked in the beginning, your first impression, if you come off soft, mumbling, your credibility, they are not going to trust you, your audience. You want to come out organized, confident, and ready to do your presentation. Using logic and evidence. Logos, logic and structure. Support your information with research, examples, and clear organization. Using things like definitions, examples, statistics, and quotes from experts. Here at the bottom, some tips to keep audience engaged with your presentation is to combine numbers and human stories, telling personal stories that pertain to your presentation, not to involve your opinion or your emotions, but to connect the presentation, to make it interesting for your audience. Statistics, I know I keep going back to the same example sometimes, but giving a report to your boss, this is the numbers we did last month, this is the numbers we're doing this month. That's the projection, we're doing awesome at this time. Other statistics, trying to sell a vehicle, the salesman, like, hey, these are the numbers that are the vehicle has been selling for. These are the rates that have been going out. This is the best, in order to get an active for the customer to buy the vehicle. And using quotes from experts. I know I gave my personal example of me in the oil field. We always our specific purpose was safety, and we would always end with the quote. Safety first, last, and always. These are the things you can use as far as get your audience's attention and keeping structure and combining these things, combine numbers and human stories to keep it interesting and keep your audience engaged in your presentation. Tips for informing with excellence. To give a great informative presentation, stay objective and don't push personal opinions. Know your audience's knowledge level. Keep your structure clear and easy to follow. Use a mix of evidence, such as stats, examples, quotes, and visuals. Design your visuals and delivery to support clarity. These are just a couple of general tips for when you're giving your informative presentation and kind of an overview of what we've covered. What is a persuasive speech? The definition being a persuasive speech is designed to convince your audience to think, feel, or act a certain way. Unlike informative speaking, persuasive speaking is subjective. Your opinions and emotions matter. The two main goals, like we've mentioned before, is a passive agreement. Get your audience to agree with your viewpoint. The example I given before is student loan forgiveness. Uh, it's not an action I am trying to persuade you to do, but an ideal point that I'm wanting you to agree with. Uh, Active agreement. Motivate the audience to take action. If I remember correctly, the example I given before is a salesman trying to actively get you to sign a contract. These are the best rates you will get, and get you to sign that contract, to take an action. You know, and the opinions and emotions do come into play, unlike informative speaking. Whether it be another example I believe I've given was an investor. You're looking to have the investor invest into your company. That is them taking action and active agreement, and unlike a persuasive agreement. But that is what a persuasive speech is, unlike an informative speech. The three appeals: ethos, logos, pathos. Ethos and logos we've covered before, and pathos would be coming pretty the next slide, I believe. But ethos equals credibility. It matters because the audience must trust you and your information. Logos is logic. It matters because you use structure, data, reasoning to support your argument. And pathos, emotion. It matters because it appeals to feelings, values, and motivation. Um, you need all three of these for persuasive excellence. Too much emotion without logic or credibility can lead to a weak argument. So this is just saying is you need all three of these. Too much of one can really hinder your credibility or your persuasive argument. Lastly, using pathos in persuasive speaking. What is pathos? Pathos is the emotional appeal. It is how you connect with your audience's feelings, values, and personal experience. How to use pathos. Tell a personal or powerful story. Use emotionally charged words. Show real world impact on people. Appeal to shared values or concerns. I feel that pathos is used a lot. For example, anytime we see commercials of breakfast foods or something like that, you always see a family eating together, happy, playing on emotions. Um, Another example on the car salesman, the car salesman telling whoever is going to sign that contract, man, I had one of these cars, making it personal. This is the fastest car I've ever driven to make that sale. Making it personal, selling a product, usually emotionally charged words. An example would be, this product's gonna save lives. You see that all the time. This medicine saves lives, or this product will save lives, or this product will save you the world of time or hassle. It plays on your emotional to persuade you into buying that product, or makes a personal connection. I feel like this is used a lot nowadays in media. But just as a reminder that emotion is powerful, and the purpose of it is to support your argument, not to replace your argument. That is a very good tip there at the bottom. But that is pathos. Lastly, to conclude our presentation, the keys strategy for public speaking. K. Know yourself. Understand your strengths and weaknesses. Practice using positive body language. Be aware of habits that might distract the audience. Um, e. Evaluate the context. Know who you're speaking to. For example, bosses versus coworkers equals a different tone. The way you would speak to your boss, not how you're going to speak to your coworkers. Match the formality and style to the situation. Be aware of the workplace or organizational culture. This was mentioned previously in our semester. The work culture in the United States is different from Germany. Why? Your communication interaction. Apply what you've learned about yourself and the audience. Adjust your time, delivery, or tone, delivery, or pace based on the audience's reaction. Stay flexible and responsive during presentation. Feed off of the interactions of the audience. And lastly, step back and reflect. Think about what went well and what didn't. Ask for feedback. Review your verbal and nonverbal communication. Use what you've learned to keep improving. Sorry. With that being said, that concludes our presentation. Whatever we can, what we did well and what we didn't what we didn't do well. Any feedback, please drop in the comments. I appreciate y'all sticking through this presentation with me. Again, I would like to thank my group. I feel like we crushed this. And thank you to our professor again for being so supportive and leading us on this journey through this course. Thank you all again. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.